Hi, I'm Jackie Thompson, and I usually put in a little bit with Vicky's speech or her lesson, but she did such a wonderful job. I think she needed me, but I will come. And I just have a little bit to add. So if you look this over, mine isn't so much the standards that the kids are learning at different ages, but their intellectual characteristics. I got something similar when I first started teaching, and it helps me to know what to expect from different grade levels. And especially from those of you that don't have a lot of experience around small children or something, this might be helpful. So anyway, I'll just explain it to you really fast and see what you can get. Like I said, I'm sure Vicki went over most of this. But, the intellectual characteristics of a 5 or 6-year-old, a kindergarten student, they're beginning to develop reasoning powers based on personal observation. And the key words are they're just beginning to develop reasoning power. So you can't expect a lot. It's mostly facts and short and sweet, and mostly personal observation. Show them that when they can, let them touch it, let them feel it, let them see it. That's the best way that they learn at this age. They're beginning to recognize how parts of details of a whole fit into the details fit into the whole. So you don't want to go on a lengthy discussion about something. You want to keep it very simple. They have difficulty recognizing relationships among objects when there are more than two. So like they're really good at like the difference between an oak tree and a sycamore tree, and that's very basic. So you want to be very basic and succinct. They understand time as time to rest, time to go home. We don't understand so much, if you tell them how many years ago this happened, or 450 BC when they started with this. So you want to be very general, very quick, and let them look and see and touch and that stuff. As you go on, and this isn't for all kids. We have some really sharp kindergartners now, and we always have, but this is just a general rule, so you can kind of get the feeling for your group. First graders, they show some increase in attention span, and every grade level is a little bit more. You want to start with the kindergarten, just really, just a minute or so, because they have the attention span of a nap, especially when there's stuff going on and there's a lot of, sensory stuff. So, first grade, they can listen for a little bit longer. They still have little understanding of the concept of time, like how many years ago or years in the future. They're more in the now. Same thing with distance. They have a longer memory, and they're starting to use classification in their memory. So insects compared to arachnids or something like that. They can get that. The second grade, they're starting to grow out of their self-centeredness. The K's and the 1s, you want to kind of, and even the seconds, and you want everything to kind of relate to them, how it would relate to them. And, this is their home, like your home. And I've heard some people talk about the stream bed, and their bed. I don't know how they're the same, but if they can relate to it, if it's something that they know, then it will help them remember. They have their thought processes are getting stronger. They love at this age, second grade, jokes and riddles. Before that, they're very literal, and you have to be very careful what you say to them. But second grade on, you could start to tell them your jokes and your riddles, and they really appreciate it. They have a much better sense of curiosity, and they like stories about the unusual. So if you want to throw those in, that would be a good age group to do that. Then third grade, they can concentrate for longer periods of time. That's the theme through the whole thing. They're little kids not much. You can talk a little bit longer each grade level. They like to show off their knowledge and understanding. They've been in school for several years now, so they want to tell you what they know. So this is a good time for asking questions or, starting with what they know and building on that. They can recognize thinking in terms of cause and effect, and they can draw relationships between things. So that you can throw that in now about 3rd grade level. And 4th grade, they increase abilities of observation and perception, and they're very interested in collecting, identifying, and classifying objects. They have collections at home. Make sure you remind them that you don't collect things from here. They can look at them and see them, but we have to leave them right where we found them. And they're interested in the world of science. In fact, a lot of them watch on TV all those science and nature programs, and they can tell you a lot more by this time than than I know. I learned something from them. And it just goes on like that. 11 to 12-year-olds, they're kind of like a higher level thinking, so you can even, you can use maybe metaphors or compare things and that the younger kids wouldn't get. You can start doing that when they're in 6th grade. And it's just, the basic thing is when they're little, you keep it really simple and move along and let them touch and look and whatever. And the older they get, you can become more abstract and more detailed and show more relationships. And that's about the gist of it. So, any questions? No? Okay, this is just a reminder if you're not sure, when you get a new group and you've never done it before and what to kind of expect.
Thank you, Jackie. So I think for those of you who decide to go on the school group hike today, audit or lead, take this sheet with you, because these are 2nd graders today, and match it up, See if what, the docents are talking about is what's on that sheet. And if you're leading, maybe, challenge them. Challenge the kids a little bit with that. I've always found that that works well with hikes, is challenging the kids. Try to give them information that's above their grade level and see what happens. And you'd be surprised. Usually, they will respond. These kids know more than you think they do, particularly about nature.
Can I share something really fast, Ron?
Sure, go ahead.
Something you said earlier is my classroom, before I retired, was adopted by the National Park Service for some of the work we did. And the very first field trip we went out, we got them off the bus, and there was an area where they all sat down, 24 kids, a couple parents, myself, my teaching assistant. And the ranger brought out a bag, nice big recycling bag, with almost everything you can imagine in there that you might find in the environment. And as she had kids pick things out, she'd ask the child to talk about it. And she'd quit, okay, thank you, she'd add just a little bit. The next one, she did about 5 kids. And the one thing I realized in that moment, it was like, that was what I do in the morning, what I did in the morning every day was that hook. To get the whole group together. You're shaking your head, you are hooked every morning.
Yeah.
And everybody's got focus, they're excited, they're interested. Because if you can hook them from the beginning, no matter what age, they'll be with you from the end. Because then I saw how the 2 rangers, we split the group, and the 2 rangers talked about the different things that the kids had pulled out of the bag. And I thought that was like, whoa, that's a cool one. So I stole it for the last 2 years that I taught. But that bag that you mentioned, I said, because I know you can't, how many pockets does your vest have? 1, 2, 3.
I haven't found them all yet.
Exactly. Yes, it has a big bag filled.
Yeah.
But the bag is I thought was a brilliant idea to bring your group together.
Yeah, we have a lot of resources around retired teachers, Jackie, Enrique. So if you've got questions about teaching techniques and things of that sort, we have a lot of resources here for you to tap into, okay?
And then the teachable moment is absolutely right in terms of what you didn't plan on teaching. Saturday, I taught a group of teachers in this program called Connecting Your Class to the Outdoors. And even the teachers, a lot of them had not spent a lot of time, I could tell very quickly, in the outdoors. And just after my hook, my warm-up, there were 2 hawks doing a mating ritual. And I said, oh, the female is on top, and then I started talking about it, and the teacher said, how do you know that's a female? I said, well, it's a bigger bird. Right? And then all of a sudden the questions started flying from a group of 24 teachers, and who were, 8 o'clock in the morning, cold and wet and hungry. But that was that hook.
Yeah.
That was that hook. Because you can't, how do you plan on a hog, the male and female hog flying right overhead, 12 feet over you, hooked in this flight in midair? You can't plan that. There's no way. So that's a teachable moment. Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
And that's another good point too. Teachable moments. Don't keep on your lecture about the whatever the relationship of the chaparral, the whatever. If you see something like that, The other thing Enrique said, and this is Vicky touched on it too. Don't be afraid to copy techniques, things from other docents. None of this stuff is copyrighted. Okay, you all have the right to use this. Okay. We used to say, you've got eyes, plagiarize. If you see something you like and you think it's relevant and truthful, use it. I mean, a lot of us, I don't know where I learned it, but I've kind of infected other docents with it. Banging on the water tank up there. You guys, have you done that yet? You've seen docents do that. The old trick with putting the hands up. You've all seen that by now with the north-facing slopes, south-facing slopes. So yeah, I mean, these techniques are here for you to use. Don't feel bad about, stealing it. You're not stealing it. Because usually what happens is when you adapt it for your own use, you'll add something maybe that, somebody else didn't think about, and it adds to the collective knowledge around here. So, feel free to do that kind of stuff. I haven't seen anybody steal my technique with the crumbling the rock up there on the trail. Remember, for you guys that went on the geology hike, that was one of my favorite little tricks. Hands-on stuff. You take some of the crumbling granite up there and you kind of crush it in your hand and you make sand out of it. So again, you see something you like, use it. One thing that didn't get passed out on Tuesday either, and I sent you an email last night and I requested that you all print it out and bring it. This hike topic list. Fred touched on this a little bit. I'll just go over it real quickly. In fact, Fred has a little card that you can put in your pack or your pocket if you want that kind of summarizes this stuff. But this was developed by one of our former superintendents, Ian Swift, who was here before Russ, and with the help of the docents. And it gives you a kind of like a bullet-pointed list of things that we'd like you to cover in your hike with the kids. Now again, this is not a formal dictate that you cover all these topics, but it does 2 things. If you do cover some of this, it really covers some of the interpretive stuff that we like to talk about with Placerita Canyon. And then secondly, it gives you a little bit of a script or, to build your own script, okay? So keep this, look at it real quick. Introduction to an ecosystem. I won't read all this stuff, but biotic and abiotic factors, we've touched on that. There was a docent a few years ago that just did not like talking about biotic and abiotic. So you don't have to, okay? If you don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. Biotic are things that are living, abiotic things that aren't living, like water, sunlight, things of that sort. Primary and secondary consumers, we've talked about that. Our 3 plant communities, chaparral, riparian, oak woodland. Yeah, we probably have coastal sage scrub. There's some other, subcategories we could talk about, but for this, the purposes of this class, all we want you to really think about is chaparral, riparian, and oak woodland. And, I think we've all had examples of that. Geological aspects of the canyon. Again, some people like talking about geology. It's good because it's always here. On a cold day like today, you're probably not going to see too many animals, but you will see geology. There's rocks and sand, and you've just had the geology class. So there's some things to cover there. 3 common tree species. I know I've had docents in the past when they've started this class say, oh my God, how am I going to learn all these trees? Well, there's only really 3 trees in this canyon that we'd like you to really learn. The oaks, coast live oak, canyon oak, scrub oak, and most of it's going to be coast live oak, okay? Sycamore, the western sycamore, you're all familiar with that. And then we do have some of these things that are less, well, not less common, but not necessarily again, people don't consider these trees sometimes, like, you know, the McLeans were talking about, what's a tree, what's a bush, what's a shrub, what's a this, what's a that, you know, what's a rock, what's a pebble, what's a stone, what's a, you know, these are, you know, kind of loosey-goosey categories. But willows are, we have two kind of willows. We have a royal willow and red willow. If you go out on the plant walk today, we'll talk about that maybe. Alder trees, those are kind of further up the canyon, white alder. Cottonwoods, we do have cottonwoods around here. You can talk about those. Maple is further up the canyon, and the big cone Douglas fir, that's further up the canyon. So, you know, if you learn the oaks, primarily the coast live oak and the sycamore, you're going to be good. Okay, and then 3 to 5 common species of birds, and we give you some examples: mammals, insects, reptiles, amphibians. Amphibians, you know, we don't see a whole lot. We will this year. The Pacific tree frog, or now it's called the Baja California tree frog or something else. We'll see that. It's the little tiny frog that makes all the noise. The western toad, that's an easy one to identify. It's kind of a big looking frog and it's got a big stripe down the back. Salamanders, rarely do we see salamanders, so, you know, well, we put them on the list anyway. And then human history of the canyon. And we go the Tatavium, Spanish explorers, California ranching days, Oak of the Golden Dream. So anyway, if you touch on some of these topics, you know, this will kind of give the background of Placerita Canyon. So any questions on this? Okay, so this is for your own use, again. And we'll try to get you that card that we talked about, that Fred, so you can put it in your pocket or your backpack, and that way you'll have it if you get stumped. What's this, you know? So anyway,